Before we jump into all this, let's make sure that you've come to the right place. If you are a business where you are concerned about what your employees say through different communication channels, whether it's social media, email, texting, blogging, or whatever it is, and you're concerned that what they say may get you in trouble as the business owner or as someone in the business, then you've come to the right place. What we do at Sharp Archive is we help you reduce your communication risk. And what that means is if you think about all the ways that we can communicate with each other, with your employees externally or within internally, whether it's things like sexual harassment or workplace violence, and you're looking to mitigate that risk before it becomes a problem as a lawsuit or a regulatory issue, then you've come to the right place. Let me tell you about the mistake that I made several years ago. This all started on the day after Christmas when my friend called me and said, "Hey, can you meet for coffee?" And he seemed distressed. When we met, he said that he was about to get fired from his firm and asked me if I'd purchase his clients, his book of business. And so I did. And one of the things he asked me is if he could be on board with the firm as an unlicensed person, which I agreed to. I wanted to help him save face because most of his clients were friends and family. Fast forward, I was monitoring his communication over the first 12 months, but literally there was nothing to monitor. And 18 months into this, we got a call from the regulators who were doing a routine examination. And part of that process is they go through all your emails to make sure there's not anything bad in there. And one thing came up was that it turned out that he had been out of the business. He had started acting as an advisor once again. And because of that, it was a huge problem because he was an unlicensed person giving advice. Long story short, all of this issue that I had with this person could have been avoided if I simply had all of the communication of her firm going into one single location for easy monitoring in a single place. And if it was in a way where it wasn't such a time-intensive process to be able to go through all of that on an ongoing basis. People often ask me what advice they would have if they're starting a financial firm or if they have a financial firm. And a lot of my advice has to do with some of the basic hygiene that you would have in running a business. And among those things would be have a good compliance consultant who can help you keep track of all the changing laws. But another thing would be to have an efficient way of monitoring communication. It's not just about avoiding fines and regulatory problems or getting a ding on your record, but it's also about your reputational risk. All of us have heard stories about celebrities who tweeted out the wrong thing or companies where they have a lawsuit and all these ugly emails come out. All of these things can be nipped right in the bud with the software that efficiently monitors these things to make sure that if there is a problem, that you can identify it right away and get rid of it in near real time. The most important lesson you can take away from this is how do you prevent from ending up where I ended up with that employee? The biggest thing is you need to have great systems in place. The only reason why bad situations happen is not usually because a system fails, but more often than not, there isn't a system at all. So if you don't have systems in place, put them in place. Number two, it's important to get third-party compliance consultants on board. I use one still to this day. It's essential to always have someone on board who can be looking over your shoulder for these things, who has the experience of bad things happening and how to prevent them. The third thing is you need to embrace technology. The world is only getting more and more complicated, and there are going to be more and more communication channels 2 years from now than there are today, and this will only continue on the rest of your career. Because of that, it's essential to not fight that and to not have policies against your employees communicating with people how they want to be communicated with, but to instead have a way that will adapt with the future. And what that means is having all of your communication consolidating into one location where you can monitor it. No matter where it's coming from, you can see it in one single view. Many people ask, why archive? There are a few reasons behind this. One is if you're from a regulated industry. So for example, my background is investments with wealth management. There are other regulated industries like banks, insurance companies, mortgage companies, or towns and cities or police departments or fire departments or healthcare or pharma, all these industries are required to keep a permanent archive of all of their communication for different reasons. An archive is a permanent record of all communication. And the reason why that's important is if there's a lawsuit or if you have a FOIA request, such as with the government, you have to be able to deliver all of those things to whoever asked them, or it may get you in trouble, and in some cases can be a felony for deleting a public record. So what Sharp Archive does is, as you engage on, say, social media, all of that's good and fine, but let's say you tweet something that you want to delete off Twitter. If you delete it off Twitter without archiving it, then that becomes deleting a public record. So Sharp Archive is constantly backing all of these things up and creating it so you can always have access to it and always be in compliance, even if you want to delete certain things from the public view of your websites or of your social media. Let me give you an example that resonated with me. So when I started Sharp Archive, what was going through my mind was trying to address my own situation with the employee from years ago. But I hadn't anticipated some of the things that would come up in people's communication. One of our users reached out to me and said, "Thank you. You saved me a big problem because yesterday one of my employees was sexually harassing another employee and we let him go." And what had happened was they had the monitoring going on and they were looking for different catchphrases, and one of their employees said something inappropriate to another coworker. And they were able to deal with it in real time, document it, fire that person from what I understand, and their firm was able to move on. And it didn't become some big issue where the subordinate was dealing with it for months on end and eventually brought a lawsuit to the firm, or what else you can imagine could have happened to the situation. And that's such a good example of what I believe Sharp Archive does at its best. It is monitoring things in real time and letting you know if there's something you should be concerned about. So if it's important to you to not end up where I found myself, the biggest advice I would give to you is it's important to get an archiving solution in place now and to create a good system of monitoring communication so that you can find these problems before they become big problems down the road for you. Let's talk about the old way of how this has been done for many years. When I started in the financial services industry, email was a fairly new thing. And for generally the past 2 decades or so, most email and communication archiving and monitoring has been on a random sampling method. What that means is they would have a firm policy of saying, we will randomly sample 5% of all emails. So some poor person in the back office is reading 5% of every employee's email. If you think about the implications of that, what it means is that if you're the owner of a company, 95% of all communication is completely unmonitored, meaning you have a 19 out of 20 chance that if you have a problem, no one will find out about it until it's a problem in the future. What Sharp Archive does is different. What it's doing is monitoring 100% of your communication based on what criteria you have for it. So rather than looking for a random sample, what it's doing is looking for phrases that could get you in trouble. So depending on the industry, you're going to have different things that concern you. If you're trying to avoid a lawsuit, or if you're worried about people committing fraud internally or stealing from you, there'll be certain phrases that they may say in their communication, and it monitors that stuff in real time as it comes in. A lot of new users, when they come to us, they like what we have to offer, they realize it's important, maybe they're required to do it. But everything in our lives tells us, well, we'll deal with this later. We'll kick this can down the road a little bit further. What I like to remind people is a lot of businesses, they want to scale up. They want to offer more services, help more people. And we tend to think of scalability in terms of things like how well you can service your clientele, how well do you do marketing. But it's important to think of scalability in terms of compliance as well. Because what happens is if you scale up your clientele and you don't scale up your compliance, eventually there will be a problem, but your compliance is not scaled up to this level, and so it explodes the whole thing altogether. The second thing I would say is as far as cost. In my situation, I can think about what my situation with the employee costs me. I mean, to be totally honest, I lost clients because of it. A lot of the clients that I'd purchased from him were his friends and family, He was angry because I had to let him go from that situation and they took their business elsewhere. That was tens of thousands in revenue each year. It cost me reputationally. It's because part of public record that there was this situation that had happened. It also, I think, cost us reputationally within our team. It lost confidence among our team of advisors. A lot of these things were not worth saving $100 a month by using a software that I had to use anyway. So the way that I would look at it is you have to do this at some level. Either you're going to do it manually by printing things out, or you're going to use the software that can actually save you money by some of those risks. The third thing a lot of people are worried about is how long does it take to get set up? Our onboarding process takes 5 minutes. This is no exaggeration. From the time that you click sign up to when your firm is entirely set up should take you about 5 minutes. It will depend a little bit on who controls the accounts. If you have someone in the office that does the passwords and has all of that and it's not you, then that will be a delay. But all in all, it'll take your firm about 5 minutes to go from not having a solution to being fully set up, where you can instantly search it, archive it, download it, do whatever you want to do with it. I hope that what we've talked about has resonated with you, and this is where you are in your business. Before you click sign up, I will make an offer to you. My email address is chad@sharparchive.com. If you sign up and it's not what you're looking for and it's not going to solve the problems that we've talked about, shoot me an email. In the first 30 days, I will refund your money. Otherwise, happy archiving. If what we've gone over today has resonated with you, then click learn more.